What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and as you guys can see by the screen, we are going to do fantasy football running back rankings with a little bit of a twist. We're going to do a nice little tier list because, one, I'm a believer that when we rank players, they should probably be in tiers, so you can just kind of see, it's not so much player A versus player B. It's, this group of players versus this group of players, and kind of where does the value come off from these tiers. Now, I got inspiration from Andrew Kyorkov. He does this series every year. I think it's a dope twist, so I don't have to just sit here and list off my running back rankings, and just from watching YouTube. If you guys check out the channel, I'm a YouTube OG. I've been only putting up videos, obviously, for like a year, but I had my account back in 2011. I was born in 2001. I've been on YouTube since I was 10 years old. I've been watching Smosh, Shane Dawson back in the day. Who else? Equals 3 back in the day. I've seen... I'm telling you guys, I'm a YouTube OG. Like I love YouTube. Obviously, I'm in the fantasy football part of things, but I've always been a big fan of YouTube. And this is kind of like the tier listing is kind of something that is a part of YouTube culture. So why not get into that today? Let's not waste any more time. If you're new here, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty bag.
All right, so as you guys can see, these tiers are in ranks of S, A, B, C, D, E, F. This is just going to be, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, whatever. And S tier is the creme de la creme. This is going to be the S tier, tier 1 of the elite running back tier. And the first guy that's going in here is Christian McCaffrey, if I can grab his head. And this is obvious. Like, please don't overthink this. I've seen on Twitter, oh, CMC is not my 101 because he finished first before. He's finished, as like the RB1 overall before, and RB1 overalls don't repeat. Just stop with the nonsense. Christian McCaffrey is genuinely our generation's, I feel like I say our a lot. I don't know if that's a Jersey thing, but our generation's Marshall Faulk. The guy averaged 29.3 points per game in 2019 and had a 36% win rate. We talk about win rate a lot. So he's winning on over a third of teams in fantasy football. Your league's taco could have Christian McCaffrey and still win. Last year, even though he was hurt, he got hurt in his second game and he came back injured for a third game. He only played a 62 and a 68% snap share in 2 out of 3 of his games. The first one was like a 98% snap share. And he averaged 30.1 points per game. That's more than his 36% win rate season, and he didn't even play on a full snap share. McCaffrey is coming for us. We need to be scared. If you do not have access to Christian McCaffrey, so if you're picking out of 102 through 112, you should be scared of Christian McCaffrey. Then my new 102, actually, I just made this critique, is going to be Alvin Kamara. He's going up there in the S tier. Kamara is my 102. And it's for a couple reasons. Obviously, since Michael Thomas got hurt, I've been contemplating, should Kamara move up? And that's because, he could, with Michael Thomas gone, he's going to dominate the touches. He will be first in targets on that team, and he could see like 13 to 15 targets while Michael Thomas is gone, like per game. He could see something crazy. Like, he could genuinely break fantasy. And now that we have this news that Latavius Murray might get cut and Tony Jones is number 2, I don't think, even if Latavius Murray sticks around, if he's really deteriorating that bad that he's on the roster bubble, I could see a world where they don't feature a number 2 back as often as they do, because people don't realize that that Alvin Kamara he doesn't dominate the rushes. Like, I don't think that he's ever rushed for over 1,000 rushing yards, and if he has, his first time was last year. So when you get a running back like Latavius Murray and you take him out of the fold and you give Kamara that much more rushing ability, or that much more rushing yardage, you give Jameis Winston as starter to him, so now you have an actual pocket passer. Taysom Hill kind of brought him down a little bit, a rushing quarterback not going to check down as much. But if we have Jameis Winston starting, Michael Thomas gone for six plus weeks, but who really knows how long he's going to be gone for? And then you have Latavius Murray and just like the RB2s on that team not as good as they have been in the past. I think Kamara could be like a 24, 25, 26 point per game guy, even more while Michael Thomas is gone. Then we have, the easy 103. Dalvin Cook. He was the RB2 last year in points per game in PPR behind Alvin Kamara. And Cook is like a top 3 pure rusher in the NFL. He's a very good running back. His downfall is just that he doesn't catch a lot of passes. He only had 54 targets last year. He doesn't have the same receiving upside as a McCaffrey, as a Kamara. but he's still solid. He gets there on efficiency, on being a good runner. 24 points per game, you really can't argue with that. At the 104, RB4, we have Saquon Barkley, and he would literally be 102. If he was 100% healthy, the ACL tear never happened, he would be my 102. He is the greatest running back prospect of all time. 91 receptions as a rookie. In PPR formats, he was the RB1 overall in 2018 as a rookie. There is nothing he cannot do. He is the most fast, most explosive running back in the NFL. Jesus, I don't know why my voice went there. He gets all the receptions. He gets all the targets. Saquon is going to have another RB1 overall season before it's all said and done. And I started to think to myself, why not 2021? If the leg injury isn't that bad, I've seen Edwin Porras come out and say that the leg injury isn't something that we need to be that afraid of. I'm not fading Saquon this year. Now we're going to go to RB2s. These are the Hall of Fame legendary upside type guys. Then we're going to our firm RB1s. And at 5 overall, we have Aaron Jones. If I can find him on this list, he is going into the A tier. And it's just because from a pure talent perspective, Aaron Jones is a dog and he has the skill set we want. He has averaged 1,500 yards from scrimmage and 15 touchdowns the last 2 years with LaFleur there. And that's all on a 60% opportunity share. And that's the one problem. His 60% opportunity share is what keeps him out of that S tier. But man, he gets all the touches we want. He's really efficient. He gets all the touches in terms of he gets all the targets and all the goal line work. And now with Jamal Williams gone, he might get even more of the opportunities. You know, he might get more catches, more targets. I don't know if he gets more goal line work with A.J. Dillon there, but he could see 65, 70% opportunity share. And then we're talking about a guy who is out there for RB1 overall, because he could easily have 80 catches and lead the league in touchdowns and be the guy you needed to have in fantasy football. That's why he is the RB5 for me. Then we have Jonathan Taylor, who I think is very close in just like overall potential and what he kind of gives your fantasy football team as a Dalvin Cook. He's a very good pure rusher. I think he could hit that 24 points per game upside type mark because he has a top offensive line. And I know the Carson Wentz stuff, I know that he just got put on IR, so there is a bit of concern there. But Jonathan Taylor was already queued up to have a bottom 5 toughest schedule through 5 weeks and then the easiest after those first 5 weeks. So I think that Jonathan Taylor is a good, by midseason type target, but I'm cool just taking him right off the bat because we know sophomores break out at running back, and he was the RB8 in points per game last year on a 48.1% snap share. He was not even handling the majority of touches in his backfield, and he was an elite top-end talent, and I think that he's just a guy that could erupt, and I want to have exposure to that. And I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but Derrick Henry is my RB7. He just doesn't catch enough passes for me to be able to put him any higher than that, is kind of just what it comes down to. And the problem is that I cannot find him right now. There he is. The problem is that his career high receptions is 18. And when you play in PPR format, that's just not enough. Last year, he was I'm telling you, if you gave these rushing numbers to a Dalvin Cook, he would have been the RB1 by far last year. If you gave Dalvin Cook 2,000 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns on the ground, and you added in his 54 targets on top of that, he would have been the RB1 overall in fantasy. But with Derrick Henry, when you only have 18 career high receptions, you don't have that same upside. He was just the RB3 in points per game last year, barely over 20 points per game in PPR. And that is his nuts outcome. 2,000 rushing yards, all of that. That is, everything broke right for Derrick Henry, and he still couldn't be the RB1. So I have a tough time drafting him at a position where he still needs everything to break right for him, hit 2,000 rushing yards, all that. Arthur Smith is gone. They bring in Julio Jones. I think they pass more. Their right tackle is an absolute shambles. Isaiah Wilson isn't there. Obviously, he was a bust. I don't know who is playing at the right tackle spot. It's just not great. But I still think like RB7 is like where I would take him. If RB3 is his ceiling, then RB7 is like a good like mid-range spot for him. Because if he comes out here next year and you draft him at the 103 and he gives you back-end RB1 numbers like RB7, RB8, RB9, RB10, you're winning 4th place in your league. That's just how that works. And on top of that, he's like 27, 28. I'm not saying he's going to get injured, but if it was going to happen, it would be one of these seasons. And that brings us to the next running back that I'm also lower than consensus on, that I know I will probably get some heat about, but it's Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott is RB8 for me. And I still like that's still high. He's still a top 10 running back. I still I will take him when he gets to me, but he usually doesn't. And the problem that I have with him is talent concerns. I don't think that this is the Ezekiel Elliott that we are used to, that we expect, that we're accustomed to. He was outside the top 40 last year in fantasy points per opportunity, yards created per touch, breakaway run percentage. He even was on the decline in 2019. His rushing yards over expected wasn't great. It was all negative. You're drafting a guy purely based on offense, on just like it being a high scoring offense and his workload being juicy. And the problem with that is that's what we are shying away from with these dead zone running backs. I've been saying all offseason we have to be shying away from dead zone running backs that are just projected opportunity, projected workload. And that's all that Ezekiel Elliott is. He's like, obviously he's going to handle a big workload, but we're talking about a guy that I just don't think, when you look at this list, I don't think that Ezekiel Elliott is the same talent as a Saquon, Cook, Kamara, McCaffrey, Derrick Henry. I don't think he is the same talent level as Aaron Jones or even a Jonathan Taylor. If you swap Jonathan Taylor onto the Cowboys, I would genuinely have Jonathan Taylor in the S tier. And I would say you could make the case for him at the 103 if he switched spots with Ezekiel Elliott. Like, he is the worst rusher. He is the worst rusher on this tier so far. Then we have Antonio Gibson. And honestly, this is like a little sub tier. If you wanted to put Antonio Gibson in like the next tier, I wouldn't scoff at you for it. And that's just because I think we're betting on upside with Antonio Gibson, because the only thing holding Antonio Gibson back is receiving upside. Last year, he was great between the tackles. He was a great runner. He was like the RB8 before he got hurt. But J.D. McKissic was taking away the receiving workload. And the reason why I'm willing to bet on it is because genuinely the best part of his college profile coming out was that he was a great receiving back. He tested at like the combine, and he tested at like the Senior Bowl as a wide receiver. He was running routes and stuff. He is overqualified to be a receiving back. I can't state that enough. He could go out there and play slot wide receiver if he really needed to. So when that's the best part of his college profile, we know he can do it, and we have Ron Rivera, who had Christian McCaffrey as his running back. There's too many factors in his favor for me to not bet on Antonio Gibson. Austin Eckler is our next running back that's up. And Eckler is very similar to Aaron Jones. He just doesn't score as many touchdowns. That's the problem I have with Austin Eckler. He doesn't score touchdowns like an Aaron Jones does. He's starting to seem to me like a floor play. And just because I know this team's going to score a lot. I know that they are going to be up-tempo. I know it's an offense I want pieces in. And I think he's going to be a stable RB1 with the PPR floor, so he's going to get a bunch of catches. He could catch 100 balls this year. He could. But he could score like 4 or 5 touchdowns. And I know touchdowns aren't really sticky year to year, but when you're a running back like Austin Eckler and you're undersized and you've often given goal line carries to bad backs like Joshua Kelly and Kalen Ballage, don't get me wrong, I love Austin Eckler. I really do, the player. I think he's very good. It's just a touchdown problem. But that is factored into his price. You get him at this price, and he has the upside. If he hits his touchdowns, then you win your league. That's what that comes down to. Which then moves us to our next tier, tier 3. This is going to be our high-end RB2s, fringe RB1s. And the first guy in this tier is going to be Joe Mixon. This is a similar bet to Ezekiel Elliott. Not that they're in a good offense, but he is going to get the workload. 81.5% opportunity share last year. That was with Giovanni Bernard there. Giovanni Bernard is now gone. We're looking at Joe Mixon in the first time ever in a pure 3-down role. And what people don't understand is, this is the tough part, is we're now in year 5. So it's hard to say that Mixon's going to do something that he's never done before. But he genuinely was in college like an Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift level pass catcher. He was that good as a pass catcher. So it doesn't make sense why he hasn't been used in that role. And with Gio gone, if he is using that role, he now has crazy upside. I think this is going to be a better offense. They're going to pass a lot. And I also think that Mixon, I think he genuinely is a good player. So if they use him in a good spot and they give him the touches and he can get used in the passing game, and this offense becomes better where they're more efficient because they have Chase, Higgins, lighter boxes, Mixon could be exciting. And this next player, I want to make it clear. Nick Chubb, I truly believe, is a top 3 pure runner of the football. Maybe you could even make the case for first. You could genuinely make the case that he is better than Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook between the tackles. You could. Here's the problem. He only had 16 receptions last year. Ever since he's been splitting time with Kareem Hunt, he hasn't been insanely good. He was the RB7 in points per game last year, but that was a weak year. It wasn't anything crazy. And again, he only had 16 receptions last year. I only have him in this tier because the workload is so tough to project for him. He doesn't have an S tier ceiling unless Kareem Hunt goes down. And when we're in this range, I'll bet on a handcuff. I'll bet on a handcuff that the projected starter needs to go down so he can be great in round 10, 11, 12. You know, that paid off with a Gus Edwards. But I'm not, in like round 2, I'm not drafting a guy that only unlocks his ceiling based off of an injury. I can't. If Nick Chubb falls to the back end of the second round, I'm down. But he usually doesn't. He usually goes like late first, early second. And that's not a spot where I'll be taking him. Then we have CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And the problem with Clyde Edwards-Helaire is I also have some talent concerns with him. Kind of like I do with Ezekiel Elliott, is that CEH has the beautiful situation in front of him. Huge upside, huge touchdown upside with the Chiefs. He has the receiving ability. He was a pass catcher in college. Problem is I have talent concerns with him. If this was DeAndre Swift or Jonathan Taylor on this team, they would legitimately be first round. If Jonathan Taylor was on the Chiefs, he would be an S tier. If DeAndre Swift was on the Chiefs, he'd be at the top of, he'd be in A tier. But CEH on this team, it's tough because he does feel like a dead, like it gives me red flags when we're leading into drafting a player with his surroundings. When this guy looks good because he's on a great offense and he's going to get the workload and all this. I would like the first thing to be talent and then the offense. But I do see the upside. He could, even if he's bad, he could score 13 touchdowns and catch 60 balls and be beautiful for fantasy. So that is kind of the bull case on CEH. I'm kind of at market with CEH. I just haven't been taking him a lot because I do just like an AJ Brown in his place, a Justin Jefferson. I do prefer those guys in that range. And Najee Harris is a guy that I'm not huge on, guys. And I know that there's a lot of guys out there that like Najee as like an early second, and they love Najee Harris. The thing is, if you love Najee Harris as a prospect, and you think that he is like really good, then fine. You can place that bet, and I really won't scoff at you for it. I personally didn't think he was a great prospect. He came out as a senior. That's a red flag. He came out with not a great yards created. Here's the thing. He was playing on an Alabama team that fielded like a top 8, top 10 offensive line every year that he was a starter there. And then on top of that, he had 33% of his yards in his senior year attributed to the offensive line. And he only had like a 5-point-something yards per carry. He thrives in a situation with a good offensive line, and even behind an offensive line that was creating a bunch of space for him, right? So the offensive line was like pushing like 3 yards ahead. He still wasn't breaking off a bunch of massive plays. He was like outside the top 50 in breakaway run percentage. He's not a guy that's making explosive plays behind a great offensive line. So now you're going to be in Pittsburgh. They have the toughest schedule in the league. They're not going to be chewing out a lot of leads. And on top of that, they have a bottom 5 offensive line unit. There's not going to be a lot of space for him to operate. And if he's not a running back that's going to thrive off of explosive plays, I think we're looking at a situation where it's kind of like similar to Trent Richardson. I think that this is going to be a season for Najee Harris where he probably finishes as a top 12 running back. I'm not saying that, but he doesn't have the upside that I'm looking for, because I think that he will get the catches, he will get the opportunity. I don't think he's going to be very efficient, and it's not so much his fault as it is the team and the offensive line isn't great. And I think they're going to have a bad offensive line. He's not used to a bad offensive line. On top of that, he's not going to break them free. Like Saquon, when he had a really bad offensive line like his first year, he would go like -2, -1, -3, and then he'd have like a 93-yard touchdown. Or I'm kind of exaggerating, but let's say like a 60-yard touchdown. Najee Harris has never scored a 60-yard touchdown in his life. And if he has, it's been maybe once. So that's the gripe that I have with Najee Harris. Again, he's still in B tier for me, and if he's there at the late second, early third, like I would take him. Then the last running back in this tier, somebody that I will cape up for until I die, is DeAndre Swift. Again, if I can find him. Here he is. He was the RB16 last year on like a 48% snap share. He's very efficient. This is going to be a team that targets him a lot. I think that he could be in play for 90 to 100 targets, and that's what we want in these PPR formats. Again, he was the RB16 last year on a bad team in the similar situation. They were also a dumpster fire. Kenny Golladay went down. It was literally just Marvin Jones and Matthew Stafford. This is going to be a great offensive line. They have Penny Sewell in there. I'm not scared at all of Jamal Williams. I think Jamal Williams is a jag. He will take exactly what he did with Aaron Jones. He will just take a clean 30% opportunity share, and that will be that. DeAndre Swift was the goal line back last year for the Lions. He will have the goal line work. He will have the receiving work. That's all that we care about. This is a team that doesn't have any pass catchers on the outside. They have Tyrell Williams and then Amon-Ra St. Brown and Quintez Cephas on the outside. The top targets on this team will be DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson. I want a piece of DeAndre Swift. He is in his year 2. If he was going to break out and be huge, it would be this year. I think that DeAndre Swift is genuinely a guy we could be talking about next year where we are taking him in the first round of drafts. Then we move off of this tier. This is our back-end RB2 range where, you could maybe get one of these guys in a hero RB build. You could maybe kind of get these guys as an RB2. This is kind of the dead zone, and I am fading a few of these guys, but honestly not so much. I have them in a spot where, I'll take them if they fall to me. And the first one on this list, and I believe like RB16 for me, is going to be James Robinson. And, I mean, he was pretty good last year. He had like an 80% opportunity share. He was like a top 7 RB. He was great. He was an RB1 last year. ETN's gone now, so it looks like it's wheels up for James Robinson, and he could easily repeat that. My only pushback is we haven't seen him operate with Urban Meyer, and it's clear that Urban Meyer has no allegiance to James Robinson. He drafted a first-round pick in his place. And when we factor in the preseason games, James Robinson and Carlos Hyde have been a damn near like 50% split on snap share. I'm not saying like Urban Meyer's out of his damn mind for doing that, but that's what it's been. So we could easily see, Urban Meyer has the Ohio State ties with Carlos Hyde. That could easily be, a timeshare where Urban Meyer just forces Carlos Hyde the ball, which we don't want. Then we have Chris Carson, who is just, he's not exciting. He's going to be a fringe RB1. He will finish in the RB 10 to 14 range. He's going to be on a high-scoring offense. Russell Wilson always scores a lot of points. They've been like a top 10 scoring offense the last 3 years. Now, and I'm really excited for what Shane Waldron's going to do for this offense. The problem is that Chris Carson doesn't catch enough passes for him to be extremely interesting from a ceiling standpoint, but he is a great, anchor. If he falls to like the 5th and you can anchor him into like 3 wide receivers and a tight end, I kind of love Chris Carson in that range. Miles Sanders is up next, and Miles Sanders is tough for me because coming out and coming up for Miles Sanders, I don't know why I'm coughing. It's literally, maybe I should. And I lost my water bottle. But we're going in dry for the rest of this video. It's all good though. Like I said, Miles Sanders, I liked him coming out, but I'm not so sure anymore that he's like a great talent. I'm not sure that he is a very good running back. He was a workhorse. He had 77% opportunity share last year, and that's great. The only problem I see with that is I'm not sure if it carries over with a new coach. Sirianni's there, and Hurts might not pass to the running backs as much. They also brought in Kenny Gainwell, so it could be a little bit more of a committee. I don't mind Miles Sanders. I just don't feel great about him. Then we have a guy that I've never in my life been high on, David Montgomery. But I'm warming up to him a little bit. I'm not drafting a lot of him, but with Tariq Cohen out, my biggest thing with David Montgomery was that if you're on a team that is bad and you aren't getting any receiving work, like Tariq Cohen, you're not getting enough touchdowns to make up for it. And he was essentially just an overpriced Ronald Jones at that point. But Tariq Cohen went down last year. He exploded. Tariq Cohen went down he didn't go down, but Tariq Cohen's looking like he's not going to be the guy, or he's not going to be healthy in time. The problem I have with David Montgomery is that I'm just not sold he's an elite talent. I want guys that are elite talents, especially in this range. I want guys that are an elite talents in less than ideal situations because I'm a firm believer that talent always wins out. Like I said, he's a decent running back. He's a good running back. I'm saying that he's not an elite talent. You cannot sit here and tell me that David Montgomery is the same talent level as a guy like Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones. Like he isn't in that tier. And if he was, he would be in that tier because with Tariq Cohen gone, he's in that type of role. Then the last guy in this tier, and I'm drafting him the most out of all the guys in this RB2 tier, and it's Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams is a uber talented prospect. He came out as like age 20. He led the nation in missed tackles force last year, and there's a bunch of signs that Javonte could just be this year's league winner. I'm telling you guys, please get Javonte Williams on at least one of your teams. Denver traded up for Javonte. Melvin Gordon is going to eventually be pushed aside sooner rather than later. Javonte Williams with a healthy scratch in their last preseason game. Melvin Gordon could have been showcased to get traded. He could get cut in this upcoming weekend when there's cuts. There's a lot of scenarios where Javonte Williams can win big for us. There's also the thing that Javonte Williams is a 7th round pick and Melvin Gordon's like in the 8th, 9th round. You want the RB1 in that situation. JJ Zachariason has done a really good study on that. Trading up for Javonte is really good for him. Another study that JJ Zachariason has done. Check out my video on Javonte. And the last thing is that Sean Siegel, the guy that I love, as far as I know, the godfather of zero RB. He comes out with a top 15 zero RB candidates every year. Number 1 on his list was Javonte Williams. And he called out Alvin Kamara on the Saints that his rookie year. He has a lot of really good calls on that zero RB list. I'm telling you guys, do not leave 2021 draft season without Javonte on one of your teams. Just don't do it. Then we have tier 5, which is just kind of the ugly tier. You know, these are these are like, I would almost call them like the trash RB2s. I don't mind them as like RB1s and zero RB builds, but they'll never be in a range where I'd grab them. And the first one on this list is going to be Gus Edwards. Trying to find him. I think that this is him. And Gus Edwards is pretty much just the J.K. Dobbins beneficiary. Rest in peace, J.K. Dobbins. I hope that he has a really good recovery. But Gus Edwards is kind of like, he is a very good running back between the tackles. He's a talented rusher. He's averaged, I think, 5 yards per carry every year of his career. He looked really good in rushing grade last year, yards over expectation. Any rushing stat you can see, Gus Edwards has been really good at. And you could say maybe it's not Gus Edwards, just the offense he's in, but at the same time, he's in that offense again with Lamar Jackson. And when you have a guy, he's not going to have a lot of receiving upside, which is the problem, but now you have Lamar Jackson, so he's going to have a lot of rushing efficiency with Lamar Jackson in that backfield. Then you have a team that's going to score plenty of touchdowns, be on the goal line, and if Gus Edwards is the main goal line back for that team, that's interesting. That's an interesting proposition there. Then we have Darrell Henderson, and he's kind of moved down my ranks with Sony Michel acquisition. I'm starting to kind of sour on Henderson. The problem is that the coaches have never trusted him. He was drafted as a 3rd round pick. First year didn't do much. Second year, they bring in Cam Akers to replace him. 3rd year, Cam Akers goes down. Darrell Henderson is supposed to be that guy now. And they go out there and they spend draft capital to trade for Sony Michel. So it just seems like they've never trusted him to be that guy. I think that he could still get the receiving workload. I think that he could still be interesting for fantasy in that offense. He just isn't as juicy as he once was. He before the Sony Michel, he was in this tier for sure on my ranks. Now I just want to say these running back rankings that you're seeing right now, they're all in tiers on my draft guide on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find them all in the draft guide. I have my top 250 on Superflex and 1QB leagues. You have also access to me through Discord, where you can ask me about trade advice, waiver wire advice, all of that, and more. I'm going to be doing like weekly rest of season rankings throughout the season. You could get all of that for literally $5 on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. So make sure you go check that out in the description, and it'll be in the comments down below. Now, getting up to that next running back, we're going to be talking about Josh Jacobs. This is a guy I haven't been taking a lot of, and we also have to remember when I'm doing these rankings, it's not so much that I think that Josh Jacobs could, outscore a Javonte Williams. He could outscore these two running backs. I have him in a spot. It's not so much based on what he will score. I just don't want to be drafting him. So I move him at a spot where I won't be getting him because he is, one, an inefficient running back. And the problem is that he's an inefficient running back on a bad team and is a 0 in the passing game. So there is an upside there. There is no upside there. He is just giving you replaceable RB2 weeks that you can find off waivers. So I'm personally not into Josh Jacobs. I'll be taking a wide receiver there every single time because the Josh Jacobs proposition and the proposition for, a Ronald Jones, a Damian Harris later isn't all that different. It really isn't. Then we have in our next tier, which is just, low end. This is really low end RB2s, RB3s. I wouldn't mind them as like RB1s and Hero RB builds, RB2 and Hero RB builds, RB1 and Zero RB builds. And the first one's going to be Chase Edmonds. Or no, not Chase. I don't know what I'm talking about here. The first one is going to be Trey Sermon. The problem is that on this tier list that I found, he is not, Trey Sermon is not that guy. I don't know who that is. I think it's Tevin Coleman. Trey Sermon isn't on this list, but he's the only one that didn't make the list. So it's fine. It's not a big deal. With the visor on him, it's Trey Sermon. I don't even know what number he wears. But San Francisco scores a lot. Their running backs do well in fantasy. I'm not sure if Trey Sermon's going to be, he's going to finish like a top 15 running back, top 20 running back. But there's going to be a stretch of time for probably 8, 10, 12 weeks where Trey Sermon is a running back that you wish you had on your team. This is a team that's going to score a lot of points. Kyle Shanahan drafted this guy. He looked pretty good. He's a decent prospect. And Raheem Mostert's old now. It just kind of seems like things are queuing up for Trey Sermon to be that guy. Next running back we have Kareem Hunt. And Kareem Hunt's tough because I think if you traded him and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and you put Kareem Hunt on the Chiefs, he's probably in this range. He's probably in this range. So you have a guy who is talented in a less ideal situation, which in theory is something that I want to be targeting. The problem is that the guy he's behind is damn near the best running back in the NFL. That's the problem. And until Chubb gets an injury, Kareem Hunt is a flex play, RB2 kind of guy. And even last year when Chubb went down, Kareem Hunt wasn't a world beater. Now, I will say it was like a 3-4 game sample size, so I'm not going to read too much into that. But it's worth noting. He wasn't some league winner when Chubb went down. Then we have Edmonds for real this time. And Chase Edmonds, he has a nice receiving floor. He was 7th in targets last year among running backs with 67. And I do like myself some Chase Edmonds. We could see a side where we could see some upside where he has 80 plus targets, takes over as the lead back in that offense, and he also fits that criteria like a Trey Sermon and like a Javonte Williams, where he is one of two backs going in like the 7 to 9 round range, 7 to 10 round range, where he is the first one being taken, and we want to be targeting that RB1. It's called like his ambiguous backfield theory or something like that. But it yields really good hit rates, and Chase Edmonds falls into that perfectly. So I'm down to just bet on that, and you get a guy who is crazy receiving back on a really good offense that'll run a lot of plays. That's appealing. Then we have Myles Gaskin at the back of this tier, and I think that we kind of overreacted a little bit with the preseason news. I was never high on him to begin with, so I didn't do a lot of reacting to him kind of being in a committee with Malcolm Brown. The problem is I just hate the security of these late round picks. You had a guy like James Robinson. Travis Etienne was drafted right in front of him. There's a lot of these guys where they are, 7th round draft picks or whatever, and they just don't get the same respect of the coaching staff. These GMs don't care. There's just a scenario where Salvin Ahmed just has the hot hand. And Myles Gaskin, for 2-3 weeks, he isn't that guy. Myles Gaskin fumbles, and now he's gone. There's just a lot of scenarios where Myles Gaskin, he's just very fragile. There's a lot of things that can go not his way and really screw him up this year. But the thing is that he has the upside. I don't mind taking a shot on him. If he falls to a spot where it's like 7th round, 8th round, he's not going to 8th round, but maybe like the 7th round. He was the RB10 in points per game last year. He has upside because he is a pass-catching back. His security is just kind of what kills me. Then we have our last tier. This is a fat tier. This is our RB2s and Zero RB builds, our Hero RB, our RB2 and Hero RB builds, sometimes our RB2 and Zero RB builds, just, depth running backs. These are like RB3s. And the first one that'll be on this list, and I think you guys are going to hate me for it, but it's Mike Davis. Here's the problem with Mike Davis. I'm just not interested. His whole appeal is purely projectable volume. It is purely that some guy at ESPN has a stat sheet or has a spreadsheet. He sees Mike Davis is at the top of the depth chart. There's no one good behind him. Okay, let's just give all of the running back duties to Mike Davis. This is a situation where things can easily go bad. This is a situation where it could be a Thomas Rawls type situation. It could be an Alex Collins type situation. I'm just not interested. He is a career backup. He has never been good, Mike Davis. He has never rushed for over 1,000 rushing yards. He averaged He was great last year, but here's the thing. People don't understand. He was a great running back through 5 games. When McCaffrey went down, through 5 games, Mike Davis was averaging 17.62 points per game, which is great. But on the back half, in his last 9 games, he only averaged 10.1 points per game. Outside of that first 5-game stretch, Mike Davis was purely just a guy. He wasn't anything crazy. And I'll pass on Mike Davis, and I'll grab this year's Mike Davis off waivers. That's been my strategy with Mike Davis. Then we have a player that I think is supremely talented. I think genuinely a very good player of football. We have A.J. Dillon, who was in his only start last year. He came in against the Titans in like a snow game, and he had like 24 points. It was insane. He went insane. And I'm excited because Jamal Williams had a little bit of a role last year. He's always had a role. He's had like 30% opportunity share and like 10 to 15 touches. And if you've ever watched Packers games and you've had Aaron Jones, it is so frustrating because they just played Jamal Williams like in like fourth quarter, down 7, and Jamal Williams will be in there for a drive. It's crazy. And I think we're going to see that with A.J. Dillon. I don't know about in crunch time like that, but I think there's going to be times where the Packers are up, 14 against the Bears in the fourth quarter with like 10 minutes to go. They say, you know what? Let's rest our playmaking back in Aaron Jones. Let's bring in A.J. Dillon and let him just put this game away, chew the clock, because there's going to be times where A.J. Dillon is going to rush the ball and everyone's going to be worn out in the fourth quarter, and he is going to just average 6 yards a carry and keep moving the chains. He is like 6'1", 247. Derrick Henry is 6'4", 247, but he is 6'4", 247. So A.J. Dillon is as big as Derrick Henry, but he's just shrunk and compacted. Like, he is genuinely a bowling ball, and he's going to average 11 to 14 touches a game. He's going to have standalone flex RB2 value, and in the event where, again, we already have that scenario where in the fourth quarter he kind of takes over a little bit, maybe he bites into some things, but if Aaron Jones wants to go down, A.J. Dillon would be a top 12 running back in fantasy football, which we want that path. Then we have Zach Moss, who is interesting because he has an all-purpose skill set. Not that I loved him coming out of school, but he catches passes and he's kind of a workhorse between the tackles. And where you kind of talk yourself into Zach Moss is that's his floor. He could be the 1A back on a high-scoring team. Where he hits his ceiling is the Bills now have a franchise quarterback in Josh Allen. They just paid him a bunch of money. I don't think it's in their best interest to keep on ramming him at the goal line. Josh Allen is going to hit a point in his career where it doesn't make sense for him to be the goal line running back anymore. That's what he was last year. That's what he's been in his entire career. Management could say, hey, Dabble, Sean McDermott, let's tone that down. This is our $500 billion man. Can't be doing that anymore. So there could be a scenario where now we're in a high-scoring offense, and it just gives Zach Moss the ball at the goal line, and he lucks into like 10 touchdowns and 1,000 rushing yards. Boom. That pays off. That pays off huge if Zach Moss could do that. Then we have Damian Harris, who I think that you guys are probably going to hate this ranking that I have for him, but I'm just not very interested in him. He wasn't a great prospect. He wasn't great as a rookie. He was redshirted his entire rookie year, and he also doesn't do the things that I like. I like guys that are pass catchers. He has 5 career catches, and he's a committee back. They have Ramondre Stevenson, who's great. J.J. Taylor, who's great. They have James White, who's great in the passing game. He just has this very narrow role where I don't see the difference between him and Ronald Jones. So I have them ranked back to back, and I'll just end up with more Ronald Jones. Like Damian Harris is going a little bit too high for my liking because I don't see a world where he doesn't have a path to go crazy. Like the Patriots don't score enough touchdowns for him to get enough goal line carries and opportunities to score. Like, he can't be like Garrett Blount, like he was that one year for the Patriots. And we've seen this a bunch of times where we think, the Patriots are going to have a one back type thing going on. And we know which one it's going to be. We did that with Mike Gillislee. We did that with Dion Lewis. Both times it went poorly, which is why I'd rather just take this guy a little bit later. And I've finally come around on Ronald Jones. I used to be Leonard Fournette over Ronald Jones guy, but Ronald Jones is genuinely a skilled running back. He is a very good running back, a pure rusher of the football. Like a Gus Edwards, like a Dalvin Cook, like a Nick Chubb, a pure rusher of the football. He is very good. He finished 7th in RB yards created over expected per attempt, which is just a very fancy way of saying that he is good at running the football. He's a great running back too. I don't think he has that upside to be like a league winner RB1 kind of guy, but he could easily finish as a back end RB2 and just have like 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. He's on a great offense. They have a great offensive line, like one of the best in the league. He's in a beautiful spot, and he's never going to get the pass catching role, but you're getting him at a price, and he's on such a good team that I'm into it. And then we have a guy in James Conner that I just cannot quit. The problem with James Conner is I feel like we're getting him at too much of a discount right now, and I know that it goes against the idea of the ambiguous backfield theory. But if one of those guys, Sermon, Javonte Williams, and Chase Edmonds, don't work out, I think it would be Chase Edmonds, and that's because I think James Conner isn't dust. I think that he's decent. He looked good last year, and we now have James Conner who's coming in. This is also like a weird situation where they refuse to give Chase Edmonds goal line work. I don't think Chase Edmonds has ever had a goal line carry for the Cardinals. Last year, Kenyon Drake had the second most carries inside the 3-yard line of all NFL running backs. If that goes to James Conner in an offense that has a lot of plays and scores a lot of points, James Conner could just score a ton of touchdowns and rush for like 800, 900, 1,000 yards and be great. So I don't mind him late at all. Then we have Raheem Mostert, who I think I'm lower than consensus on, and if he falls to me late, he has fallen to me in one league with the Fantasy Stock Exchange where I grabbed him late on like a 0 RB team, and it's a fun look because he's going to be great for like the first 5 games, first 6 games. He usually doesn't hold up. We could see Trey Sermon take that role. He can get hot with rushing efficiency. The problem is that he's a 20-year-old back. He has a low ceiling. He's never going to be like an RB, like a top 10 RB. But he's interesting at the back end of this tier. Then we have a guy that I'm starting to really sour on. He used to be at the top of this tier. He used to be like right here between Mike Davis and AJ Dillon, but I just changed that because I get that he has a path to a 3-down role, but I don't think that he has the talent. I was never high on him coming out, but I was just like, okay, they spent a 4th-round pick on him. It seems like he'll be the lead back, so I'll get there. He didn't seem like the featured runner in preseason. It was kind of a committee. I know that Tevin Coleman was getting rested, so he's kind of like the projected starter. And then Ty Johnson was taking a lot of the carries. Ty Johnson was almost like getting more carries than him in some spots. And I think that Ty Johnson in that scheme, where it's a wide running lanes, and it's kind of, Ty Johnson is the prototype of Raheem Mostert. Ty Johnson is this compact back that has really good straight line speed. He could just be really good for this offense. He could be Raheem Mostert, where Raheem Mostert is a random, I don't know if he's like a 5th round or 6th rounder. I don't know where he was even drafted, Raheem Mostert. But we could be seeing that with a Ty Johnson. He's also in that same mold of a Tevin Coleman and a Matt Breida. So I like the idea, he could be the next Matt Breida. And this is like a Ty Johnson rant, but Michael Carter just scares me. He has the receiving skill set and all that, but I don't think that he is as locked into the starting position as ADP is telling us. Then our last running back for today to round out our top 36 is Tony Pollard. One of my favorite late round picks because he genuinely is a top talent at running back. He put up 31 points in Zeke's absence last year on a team without Dak Prescott. On that dumpster fire that Zeke sucked on all year, Tony Pollard came in his first game in there, went crazy for 31 points. Now, I'm not saying that I personally, hot take, I do think that Tony Pollard in a vacuum is probably a better running back than Ezekiel Elliott, or it's at least very close. But I do love Tony Pollard. If Zeke was to go down, Tony Pollard would be a legit man. If Zeke went down, Tony Pollard would be getting drafted somewhere in this range. In that offense, Tony Pollard is actually very good, so I like him as an upside throw later. But that's going to do it for us today. Now, if you are preparing for your fantasy football drafts that are upcoming, I know a lot of us have drafts going on. I'm going to be uploading 1 to 2 times a day. I'm going to be trying to live stream every day. I'm trying to kick things into high gear here. But if you really want to prepare for your fantasy football drafts, make sure you go check out underdogfantasy.com. Use my promo code RON when you deposit $10 or more for a $25 bonus, because if you're going to go in there and you're going to go into your home league without much prep, you're going to get screwed on draft day. And if you go in there and you do, automized mocks on Fantasy Pros and all that, you're going to get values that aren't actually happening. But if you go into Underdog, you deposit $10, you get $25 back. That's $35 total dollars. You can now do 7 $5 drafts and really see what it's like with money on the line and who's going where, how you want to construct your team. You can get experimental, try 0 RB, hero RB, bimodal RB, all of that good stuff. So make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. Download the app, get the website, whatever it is. It's Best Ball Fantasy Football, so you can go on there. You can do I'd almost call it like a paid mock draft where you draft your team, and it's best ball, so you don't have to worry about it again, because all the lineups get set up as the season goes on, and that all gets automated. You don't have to worry about it until the end. Maybe you get you won a couple of the leagues for $5, and then you get a nice little chunk of change in your pocket. And like I said, promo code RON when you deposit $10 or more, you get a $25 bonus. So make sure you use promo code RON on Underdog Fantasy. And that's gonna do it for today. We're going to be coming out with a wide receiver version of this. I'm going to be trying to stream every day, some mock drafts. So we got a lot of cool stuff planned for this week. This is the most important week of the entire season. So if you guys have any video ideas, anything among those lines, let me know, man. We just dropped the fantasy draft party. I loved that video. I thought it was really cool. So make sure to go check that out. And that's going to do it for today. So as always, you can follow me at @RonSword_ on Twitter, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Playing Buenos Aires while they sleep in Buenos Noches. Wonder if I wrote this, cause it's so crisp. The most brokest gold stockbroker when I source this. I could win an Oscar, Russian accent Hosky, acid addict, parsley, avid actor.